The illustrious Bob Holt, as it says in our rundown. I think that's an accurate description.
I thought it was.
Yeah.
Let's just
More
I'm gonna
illustrious
start
than
putting
luxurious.
See, every Thursday I'm just going to start putting random adjectives in that describe how incredible Bob Holt is.
Okay. Well, he's, of course, great sports journalist from the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette covering the Razorbacks. Bob, are you okay with the description of the word illustrious before your first name today?
Yeah, I guess that's a nice compliment, so I'll take it. I kind of remember, I think one time when Steve Spurrier was at Florida, somebody wrote something about him being a genius, and he said he kind of, that was too over the top or something. They say, well, what do you think I said? He goes, oh, how about mastermind? So I was like, well, it's not really that much different, Coach, but whatever. So, yeah.
I know a lot of times the word genius will have evil next to it, but to me, mastermind is more evil. That's Steve Spurrier, or maybe is that Nick Saban? Would he be the evil mastermind behind the Death Star that is Alabama football? And I know that you were writing about it. I wanted to ask about this. So I mean, you got Jimbo Fisher and his Aggies going up against Nick Saban and the Tide on Saturday. So this is the 20th chance for a former Nick Saban assistant coach to finally beat him. It hasn't happened yet. Do you think sometimes that his former assistants are intimidated when they coach against him?
I don't know if intimidated is the right word, but I think they have a very healthy respect and a knowledge of what he can do, and then just how in precision, his program is. It's kind of like, it's like Sam Pittman, I think, said something like this on his radio show last night that, he knew it was going to be tough sledding for Arkansas's offense against Georgia because he'd been, practicing against those Georgia defensive linemen for the last 4 years. So he knew how good they were. I think these guys know how good Alabama is. They know how good the players are. They know how good the staff is. And really, it seems like no matter what turnover they have on the staff, obviously the one constant is Nick Saban, which is the most important thing. But it just seems like, some years they've had a lot of turnover. They've had a lot of turnover on players, and they've had a lot of turnover on staff, and it just seems like they just keep rolling along. When you look at LSU, and I think LSU's still going to have a pretty good season, but you can't tell me that losing their defensive coordinator, losing their passing game coordinator, losing 20-something guys to the NFL, having their two All-Americans either opt out or be hurt. That obviously hurt them against Mississippi State, not taking anything away from that, but it really makes, you look at what happened to LSU last week, it really makes what Nick Saban continues to do at Alabama to be all the more amazing.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I wanted to ask about what Coach Orgeron was like during the teleconference because, last year where anybody's going to be entertained, of course, but they were 15-0. So there's always going to be positivity at the midweek press conference that you're a part of there. They hadn't experienced a loss in 16 games. And Coach O would know what he's facing with this almost brand new team better than anybody else. So what was he like at the the teleconference?
Oh, he was fine. I didn't watch his Monday news conference where he meets with the local media there in Baton Rouge, but I read the transcript. It gets posted on LSU's website. And, he was very accountable. He basically said, what happened was my fault. We got to coach him up better. LSU was going to be pretty young anyway, and I'm not making excuses for them because they still have a lot of talent, but Derek Stingley, their All-American cornerback, they said it was not COVID related, but I asked him, well, did you ever figure out what it was? And he said he hadn't seen the report, but if he did, he wouldn't say what it was or something to that effect. I guess they're keeping a lid on stuff. Makes you wonder if he got food poisoning. I really probably shouldn't even speculate, but he got sick Friday night. He missed the game, and of course, I'm not saying that Mississippi State wouldn't have won or wouldn't have passed for a lot of yards, but I'm sure LSU would love to have had their All-American cornerback in there. But, they had a lot of young cornerbacks, and they got picked off or missed tackles or were in the wrong places. And then Ed said something like, hey, welcome to the SEC. You got to get better, And so I think he was didn't make excuses. I think he's one of his closest. There are no excuses. So, they're just coming off that national championship. Now, if they go to Vanderbilt and lose,
Different
There are going to
story.
be some pretty disgruntled fans, cardboard or otherwise. But I think Ed, he basically said, "Hey, man, we got beat." Gave credit to Mississippi State and said, LSU's got to get better. They got to coach them up better.
Let me get a thought from you on this Arkansas-Mississippi State game that we're going to see on Saturday, because before the season started, I think most of us, if you didn't pick Arkansas in the preseason to win this game, you at least would say, well, they've got a shot. This is going to be one of the teams that's got a first-year coach. They're sort of rebuilding. So you would put this on the list along with Ole Miss and with Mizzou. And maybe those are realistic, maybe they're not. But now this game on Saturday doesn't quite feel as realistic as it did even 2 weeks ago. Do you give Arkansas much of a shot Saturday?
I think they have a better shot to win in Mississippi State than they did to beat Georgia. I don't know if that's – I think they're a 16-point underdog. And you're right, this was the game before the season that a lot of people thought, Arkansas can win that game. I don't know if this was ESPN or who, but – one of those websites had a kind of a 50-50 game, which I said, yeah, I can see that, They'll probably give Mississippi State a slight edge of being at home. Then they go to LSU and win and, throw for 600-something yards and have three receivers with 100-plus yards. And you think, well, that's not very good for Arkansas. They jumped into the rankings. Of course, now, for right now, at least Arkansas's got 8 ranked teams on the schedule. But, you wonder how the Mississippi State players will handle, coming off such a heady win. I mean, I think that's the highest ranked team Mississippi State ever beat on the road. Mm-hmm. And so, the Mississippi State staff probably has to work this week to kind of get their players refocused, bring them down back to earth a little bit. I'm sure it's still going to, I assume fans can bring in some cowbells, and I guess, 16,000, 17,000 cowbells won't sound like 65,000 or whatever, but still, it's a road game, and you wonder how some of these young guys are going to react, not having the familiarity at home, because Arkansas is playing a lot of young players. I think, hey, this is a crazy season. I mean, you see K-State come back from a big deficit to beat Oklahoma, although Oklahoma seems to have one of those kind of head-scratching games every season, losing to somebody. You're like, how did that happen, But, I think you have to favor Mississippi State after the way they played and them being at home. But, in this season in 2020, a lot of strange things can happen. So I think Arkansas has just got to go there, and they got to obviously play better on special teams, play better on offense, and hope they get another strong defensive performance.
Speaking of Bob Holt here on halftime, Bob, do you think the key for the Arkansas offense to move the ball against this Mississippi State defense, and we've talked about that in the previous segments, we're going to continue to talk about for the rest of the show, the defense for Mississippi State is not on the same level as Georgia, though it is still a pretty good defense, and they were able to slow down a little bit of this LSU offense. Is the key going to be, though, to get Rakeem Boyd running the football consistently and getting maybe 4 or 5 yards of carry?
Yeah, I think they got to get that running game going. Obviously, Arkansas, like most teams, want balance, although, Mississippi State didn't have a lot of balance. They had a lot of passing yards. They didn't run. Kylan Hill, people remember, he ran for over 230 yards in Arkansas last year. And I think he ran for 34 yards Saturday, but he just had 7 carries. But he had 8 catches for over 100 yards, including a 75-yard touchdown on wheel route. So they're kind of getting him the ball in short passes. It's almost like part of their running game, you would think. So, but yeah, Arkansas, obviously, there wasn't much running room against Georgia. That put a lot more pressure on Felipe Franks in the passing game. Georgia was kind of able to tee off, get some picks and force some bad throws, quick throws. And Arkansas, they need that offensive line needs to do a better job opening some holes where they can get the running game going, so they're not so reliant on the pass.
How much pressure do you think is on? I think if we'd have asked this question 2 or 3 weeks ago, I would say there probably would be pressure, just because at that point we thought that this, maybe not an easy win, but this could be a very winnable game for Arkansas. How much pressure, though, do you think is on Sam Pittman and this team to go in there and, A, look vastly improved from what they were against Georgia, or B, to even get a win in Starkville this Saturday? Is there a lot of pressure on this team, or do you think with the way that Mississippi State performed against LSU that if you were to fall in this game, it's not the end of the world?
Well, when you're 16-point underdog, you've lost 20 straight SEC games. I don't know how high the expectations can be. I know they'd love to get that I don't really want to get a monkey off their back at this point. It's probably more like a gorilla. But Sam got asked this on Monday, basically, do you think you can win, like stop the streak? And he goes, well, that's the plan, Kind of what Jimbo Fisher said about beating Nick Saban, can you be the guy to do it? Well, that's the plan, And Arkansas, I'm sure, is going there with what they feel like is a good game plan, offense and defense, and I think the players, crazy as it might sound, a 37-10 loss, got some confidence restored. The fact they were able to hang with Georgia for the better part of 3 quarters. I think the pressure would be more on Mississippi State because you just had this, gargantuan win for your program, one of the best, one of the biggest wins in program history, I would say. I'm sure they always like beating Ole Miss no matter what, but you go on the road and beat the defending national champs. That's a pretty big win for a program like Mississippi State. And so now they're 16-point favorites. They're ranked. I would think the pressure would be on Mississippi State. I'm not saying it's a free shot for Arkansas, but, what if Mississippi State loses this game? Then it's like, oh, well, they just, they're not consistent, or they couldn't handle success, or it was a fluke that they beat LSU. Stingley was out, and it was LSU's first game without all these great players they lost. So I think the pressure would be more on Mississippi State. Obviously, the pressure grows in Arkansas as this losing streak in the SEC just gets worse and worse. But the truth is I doubt Arkansas will be favored in any SEC game. So from a pressure standpoint, I think it's more on, man, we don't want to be the team that loses to these guys. That's kind of the way I look at it.
Bob, we'll let you go there. Thanks as always, man. Stay illustrious. We'll figure out a good adjective for you next week, too.
Okay, you guys take care.
You got it. Bob Holt, one and only, illustrious sports writer from the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette.
Can't go wrong with that.
Hey, you're looking for an RV, new or used. Wheels RV in Springdale is the place to look. They're 5 miles west off exit 72 in Springdale, right under the Tawnytown Water Tower. Been in business over 20 years, but new owners Lee and Chris have dedicated themselves to customer service and stock all the great brands of travel trailers like Grand Design, KZ Sportsman, Forest River Vibe. They have the Paradigm Fifth Wheel, which is the hottest new fifth wheel in the industry from Alliance RV, and Wheels RV is the only lifetime warranty dealer in Northwest Arkansas and the River Valley. Give you top dollar for your trades, best deals on new RVs in Northwest Arkansas. Find them at wheelsrv.net.